Hey there, I hope you're doing well. My name is Arya and today we're going to look at some more Reddit stories. If you enjoy Reddit stories, consider liking, subscribing, and maybe hitting that notification bell too. Let's get started with today's first story. Much love, everyone. Today's first story comes from I caught my wife cheating, so I got revenge on both. After leaving Miami, my life took a strange, unexpected turn. I thought I had everything under control, surviving tough times and building a successful business through sheer will and hard work. My journey had been filled with pain and betrayal, but when I met Ellen, I believed I'd finally found something real, a bit of stability. Amidst the chaos 6 years into our marriage, I started noticing small cracks, unspoken frustrations, long silences. I convinced myself it was normal, but the growing distance between us felt wrong. I couldn't shake the feeling something was off. One day after calling to Ellen from the bathroom, I came out to find her in the kitchen with a stranger, his hands all over her kissing her, like I didn't exist. What the hell is going on? I shouted. The man barely reacted. Smirking, while Ellen calmly asked me to get him a beer. Shocked, I played along. I grabbed a Sam Adams, opened it, and instead of handing it over, I poured it out onto the floor. I confronted him directly, making sure he knew he was no longer welcome in my home as he screamed in pain. I dragged him out of the house by his hair, then returned for Ellen, throwing her and her purse outside too. I coldly told her to take her lover to the hospital before they left. I whispered in the man's ear, warning him not to call the cops or I'd finish the job. I shoved him toward Ellen, her face in shock, for once speechless. I walked back and inside, and moments later I heard the car start and drive away. My body shook, not just from what my wife had done, but from how I reacted. I'm not usually violent, but I used to have a quick temper in brutal outbursts. I had just turned 40, Ellen was 39, and we had been married nearly 6 years. During that time, I never told her about my past in Miami. I didn't mention growing up as a street kid in Little Cuba. When I was 12, my father was eliminated in a bar fight. A Cuban man got mad, thinking my dad was hitting on his girl, though she'd only asked for a cigarette. My father held his own until the Cuban's friend stabbed him from behind. After that, it was just me and my mom. My dad's end of life hit her hard. We were already struggling, and she started working at a strip club to make meat. She made decent money until a customer attacked her. The bouncer handled him, but the guy waited for her after work and knocked her to end of life in an alley. She died alone and her body wasn't found until morning. I was for social services, found my Uncle Sean Hennessy, who I didn't even know existed. He owned a bar near where my dad was eliminated. He took me in, but we weren't close. I asked why my mom never mentioned him, and he just said some things are better left dead. I was always getting into fights, mostly losing, until Sean finally took pity on me. He said, "JC, life's tough, learn to survive." With these he held up his fists. "You can lose a knife or run out of bullets, but your fists are always there. I'll teach you to fight. The rest is up to you." He taught me well. The area soon became overrun with Cuban refugees, many from Castro's prisons, and I learned to survive with my fists and temper. I became known for my toughness in underground fight circles, participating in intense physical competitions that required both skill and endurance. By 19, I was a tough, hardened fighter and spent most of my teen years in juvie. A cop finally pulled me out of that life at 22. I got busted again for fighting, and Deputy Will Hartman sat me down in room, just staring at me for a long time before finally speaking. "Jason Michael Qua, that's your full name?" I nodded. "My friends call me Jazz." He chuckled. "You don't have any friends, Jazz?" I shrugged. "Jazz, I've got a proposition for you. Interested?" I stayed silent, just looking at him. "Look, I've got you on attack with a deadly weapon, your fists and mayhem. You bit that guy's ear off. Lucky we found it. Yeah, and don't even try the self-defense excuse. You're an adult now. No more juvie from here on out, it's adult lockup." So what's your point? I asked. He studied me before speaking again. Marines. I laughed. Marines, no way. Listen, JC, you're smart, tough, and you know how to survive. The Marines could use that. Otherwise, you know where you'll end up, and where's that dead? Everyone ends up dead. So what I know about your parents, your uncle, you've had a rough life, but it doesn't have to stay that way. Think about it. While you're in lockup, I did think about it. After 3 attempts on my life in county jail. Thanks to the Cubans, I changed my mind. The guy whose ear I bit off was one of them. Next thing I knew, I was crawling through mud under razor wire at Paris Island, South Carolina. Explosions and bullets whizzed past, and all I could think was, what have I done? By the time I joined the Marines, Vietnam was long over. I didn't see major combat, but I found plenty fights stationed in Germany, some buddies, and I went bar hopping in West Berlin, which ended in a big brawl. One of the locals, a 6 feet 5 inches 300 pounds guy, and his crew didn't like us. They made comments about Cuba and communism, and it didn't take long for fists to fly. By the time the MPS and German police showed up, the big guy and his buddies were out cold back on base. I was charged with fighting, causing a disturbance, and more. After a few days in the BRG, my co asked me, would you be willing to fight in a ring hell? Yes, sir, I replied. I spent the next few years becoming somewhat of a legend in the service, winning most of my fights, but everything changed after an intense fight in the Philippines, where one of my opponents suffered a critical injury. It was a turning point that made me reconsider my involvement in fighting. Seeing him lying there, eyes open but lifeless, deeply affected me. After that, I never fought again, despite my division's disappointment. 2 months later, I left the service. Back in the US, I enrolled in college studying computers and technology. I already had some skills from the Corps, but I wanted to learn more. After 5 years, I graduated with honors and a master's in computer science. Soon after, I was hired by a successful tech company in San Jose, California, which would later become Silicon Valley. I advanced quickly, but working for others wasn't enough. With 2 coworkers who shared my vision, we started our own company, CB's Tech Research Inc. The company grew rapidly, especially with the rise of the internet. Our breakthroughs in hardware made us a major player, and we became incredibly wealthy. In my early 30s, I visited Miami to find the deputy sheriff who had changed. Please inform us if you are enthusiastic about this narrative. To indicate that you found the video to be enjoyable, please press A. If not, press B. I am truly motivated by your feedback to collect additional stories that are both meaningful and inspiring. My life, but I was saddened to learn he had died in the line of duty. I met his widow Angela and their children. His daughter, Lisa, a nurse, was in her late 20s, and his 2 sons were still in school to help them. I set up college trusts for the boys and provided financial support for their mother, all anonymously. Each Christmas I received a card from them with photos and updates. That was 7 years ago now. At 40, I'd been married for 6 years and was on the verge of losing my wife. I poured myself a gin and tonic and headed to the backyard, sitting on a bench by the koi pond. The sound of water cascading over stones into the pond, surrounded by flowers and lily pads, was my escape, a place to relax and think. I reflected on what had gone wrong with Ellen in all our years together. She never showed signs of unhappiness. Maybe she found me too quiet or reserved, but she never complained. I met Ellen at a tech expo in Anaheim, California. I was staying at the Marriott next to the convention center with Jack Bledo, my partner and co-founder of PocTech. While Jack was arguing about government regulations, I noticed a beautiful brunette at a booth filled with brochures. "Excuse me, Jack," I said, making my way over. I picked up a brochure on fiber optics, pretending to be interested, when I heard a woman's voice. "Can I interest you in the latest in fiber optic installation?" I looked up into her blue eyes and replied, "Only if we can discuss it over dinner." Ellen as her name tag. Reed frowned. "No thanks. If you're not serious, please move along." She walked away, leaving a techie looking kid to approach me. "What can I help you with?" he asked. "I'm interested in your fiber optics." What's your company's installation capability for my firm? I lied, hoping to speak with Ellen. Which firm? CB's Tech Research in San Jose. The kid was stunned. You're Jason Kwa. Yes, can I speak with Ellen after a heated exchange behind the curtain? Ellen returned, clearly frustrated. Sorry for my earlier rudeness. Mister, she said. Let me show you what we offer. Call me Jazz. I said, motioning to a table. We sat down, and while she talked about fiber optics, I was more focused on her. After a while Jack appeared. Thanks for ditching me, Jazz, he said. Turning to Ellen, I'm Jack Bledo. Sorry, you had to meet my associate. Jack, completely oblivious, blurted out. We already have fiber optics. Ellen glared at me. Realizing I'd been pretending. You're such a holy, she said, angry. Jack quickly excused himself, leaving me to face Ellen. I'm sorry, I said. I just wanted to meet you. Let me make it up to you. Dinner tonight. Ellen glared, then smiled. Fine. Or how about the Cheesecake Factory at 7? See you then, she said, walking away. Later Jack called my room. Dinner tonight, Jazz. I already have plans, I replied. Good luck with the woman from the B. Jack laughed. You're going to need it. Jack might have been right. At 6:30 I headed out wearing my best Levi's, a black t-shirt, a tan corduroy jacket and white Reeboks. I waited at the Cheesecake Factory for 25 minutes before Ellen showed up with 5 others, including the geeky kid from the expo. That's when I realized why she accepted my dinner invite so easily. Mr. the Kid David Ballman greeted me. Let me introduce my team. He introduced each one. Nice to meet you all, I said, glaring at Ellen. Call me Jazz. We had a table ready and surprisingly, the evening went well. David had a great sense of humor and kept us laughing after dinner. They thanked me and left. Ellen stayed behind. Thanks for being a great host, she said, smiling mischievously. I'm sorry. I knew you meant just me, but I told everyone it was an open invite. They were excited to meet you. Do you forgive me? I laughed. No, I don't think I'll ever forgive you. She looked surprised, then realized I was joking. We spent the rest of the night at downtown Disneyland, ending with drinks at the House of Blues. I called a cab to take her to her hotel. So where are you staying? I asked. At a motel by the convention center, she said, but I was hoping to see the Anaheim Marriott. She kissed me softly and added, that's for being a good sport. I'd like to show you more in your room if you're interested. There's no one else I'd rather be with, I said, helping her into the cab. A year later we were married. Jack and John Stearns were my best men, and even David from the expo was a groomsman. I thought we were madly in love. 6 years later, I finished my 4th gin and tonic. Looking up at the dark sky, it was time to go inside. The phone had rung a dozen times and I didn't need to guess who was calling. I wondered if she'd have the guts to come home. I went to bed at 4 in the morning, but lay awake for another hour before finally sleeping. The morning didn't help my mood. The empty side of the bed reminded me of yesterday's mess. I stayed in bed dreading the day, but knowing I had things to handle. First stop was the bank. I adjusted our accounts, leaving some in the checking for Ellen, but closed the savings and canceled her card. She had her own account and a good job as an executive at Ellen's Sun Insurance, so she'd be fine. Without me, her Lexus was in both our names, but I didn't care. I had my Jeep and Harley. The house was the bigger issue with the economy. Tanking selling, it would be tough. I figured one of us would need to buy the other out at the office. I called my attorney Matt Brunn and told him everything. He couldn't believe it. Jazz, there had to be a reason she did this. I don't have a clue. Matt, everything seemed fine until yesterday. I need to find out who that guy is. Give me his license plate number and I'll check, Matt replied. I handed it over. Start the paperwork. I don't know if I can even talk to her right now. You need to talk to her, Jazz. Find out why. I don't know. She acted like I wouldn't do anything, like she was making me a fool. Matt looked at me seriously. Does Ellen know about your past? No, I said, staring out the window. I never told her about my childhood or the violence. I wanted to leave it behind, especially after liquidating that man. Matt nodded. Okay, I'll get started. Do you want her to have access to the house, a restraining order? She can access the house. I'll be gone for a while. No restraining order. Not yet. Where you going? Matt asked, raising an eyebrow. I'm not sure, maybe the San Juan Islands or northern Idaho. I'll let you know, I replied. When do you want her served? He inquired. When everything's ready, I said, firmly. Got it. And Jazz? Matt gave me a serious look. Take care of yourself. You look like hell. I laughed lightly, then left his office and headed to CB's Tech in San Jose. As I walked into the lobby, Jamie, a receptionist, called out to me. Jason, someone's waiting for you in the conference room. Jamie said with a smile. Who is it, Jamie? Why couldn't Jack or John see them? I asked. It's not a him. It's a her, Jamie replied, eyes twinkling. She asked for you personally, and she's very attractive. I rolled my eyes. Cut it out, Jamie. What's her name? Jamie glanced at her notes. Lisa Hartman from Miami. I froze, stunned. Lisa Hartman. Here, thanks, Jamie, I'll handle it. I hesitated for a moment before entering the conference room, feeling oddly nervous when I finally opened the door there. She was Lisa, even more beautiful than I remembered. Mr. Kwa. She greeted me with a soft smile. Lisa, wow, you've grown since I last saw you, I said, cringing at my awkward comment. She laughed, her voice light and cheerful. Yes, it's been 6 or 7 years. I was in my 20s, and now I'm in my 30s, fully grown. Sorry, Lisa. I'm just surprised to see you. How are Angela and your brothers? I asked, trying to recover. Actually, Leighton moved to my office. It's more comfortable. She stood and I led her to my office as we passed my secretary, Loda. She gave me a knowing look. It's beautiful in here, Lisa remarked, looking around the office. Thank Loda, my secretary. I said. She handles the decor. Loda. That's an unusual name. Native American? Lisa asked, curious. Yeah. I think she's half Sioux, very protective too. I noticed. Lisa grinned. She watched me like a hawk. That's her. Can I get you a drink? I offered iced tea. If you have it, she replied, green tea. Okay, I asked. Perfect. As we sat down, Lisa got straight to the point. Jazz, you're probably wondering why I'm here. I am. How's your mother? I asked, concerned. Her expression grew serious. Jazz, she's dying. She asked for you. My God, Lisa. Why didn't you call me? I'd have come to Miami right away, I said, shocked. I know, but she insisted I come see you in person. Lisa explained she wanted me out of the way. It's pancreatic cancer. The news hit me hard. I'm so sorry, Lisa. Can I help? Financial support. She's covered at the hospital, getting the best care. Your monthly checks have been a blessing. By the way, both boys graduated with honors. Bobby from MIT, Dean from Georgia Tech. Thanks to you. I silently chastised myself for not visiting them over the years. I'm really sorry. I haven't come to see her or you, and the boys don't go there. Lisa said firmly. Mom said you'd feel guilty. You've had a lot on your plate. You started a business, got married. Your hands have been more than full. What you've done for us already is more than anyone could ask for. Her voice softened. Mom would love for you to visit. Can you all have the company jet ready tomorrow? I said right away. Do you have a place to stay tonight? I haven't had time to find one. She admitted. Perfect. You can stay at my apartment nearby. Oh, won't your wife mind? I glanced away before answering. Ellen and I are separated. It's probably heading toward divorce. I'm sorry to hear that, Jazz. I hope I'm not adding to your stress. Not at all. It's nice to have you here. Are you hungry? I could eat great. I said. I know a little place that has the best pizza and Italian food this side of the Rockies. Lisa smiled. Can we stop by your apartment? First, I need to drop my bags and freshen up. No problem. You ready? Lisa nodded, and we left the office. I told Lakota I'd be unavailable for the week, but she could reach me on my cell. What about Ellen? Loda asked. If she calls, tell her to speak with BR. He knows what to do. I replied. Lakota gave me a sympathetic smile. I escorted Lisa to the parking garage where my Ford F-150 Super Crew was parked. We stopped at the lobby where security had stored her suitcase after tossing it in the truck bed. I opened the passenger door for her and watched as she slid into the seat. As I got in, Lisa looked around and said, "I didn't expect you to drive a truck. I thought you'd be in something more fancy." I grinned and buckled up. "Not really my thing, but if that's what you want, I can arrange it." Lisa blushed. "Oh God. No. I was just thinking out loud, the trucks." "Fine, me too," I said, starting the engine. Let's go. The next day, after an evening of reminiscing and a restless night, Lisa and I were already flying over Phoenix, Arizona, heading to Miami on the company's Gulfstream G350. Lisa sat in the co-pilot seat, her eyes wide with wonder, mouth slightly open as she stared at the controls. "Jazz, I didn't know you could fly. There's a lot you don't know about me," I replied with a smile, checking the altitude and speed. "So what happened with you and Ellen? If you don't mind me asking." "Not anymore," I sigh. Somehow she thought I'd be okay with being her betrayed man, just sitting by while she slept with other men. My God, Lisa. Why would she think that? Lisa gasped. "That's insane. Why would she even? That's the million-dollar question." "I have no idea. I know we've grown apart lately. Honestly, I can't remember the last time we were physically engaged. I guess I was so focused on work I didn't even notice, and she never said a word." I paused, thinking back, searching for any sign, any warning, but nothing came to mind to me. It felt like Ellen just suddenly decided I didn't matter anymore and she ended our marriage by cheating. But why? I glanced at Lisa as she looked out the window. "Tell me about you and the family." "There's not much to tell," she said, turning back to me. "After we lost Dad, Mom struggled to make ends meet. We got Dad's pension, but it wasn't much. I decided to go to nursing school and the boys helped out with part-time jobs as long as it didn't interfere with their studies." She fell silent for a moment before continuing. "Jason, you were a godsend. I didn't even know him. Except what my mom told me, how my dad put him in the Marines when he showed up." She was so overwhelmed. She knew everything about his past and what my dad did for him. "He always kept her updated on your accomplishments in the Marines." Lisa hesitated before adding, "He was so proud of you. Jazz, Mom showed me all the clippings from your boxing matches and articles about CB's tech research. Dad was planning to fly out to see you to ask if you'd come visit the family. He wanted to introduce you to Mom, me, and the boys." Her voice wavered as she said, "But he was shot and eliminated the following week." The memory of Deputy Will Hartman's end of life hit me hard. I stayed silent as the plane hummed the turbines, the only sound in the cabin. After a while, I asked, "I noticed you're not wearing a wedding ring. You're not married." Lisa smiled wistfully. "No, I never really had the time between nursing school, working at the hospital, helping Mom and the boys. There wasn't room for anything else." She turned away, gazing out the window again, and there were other things. I wondered what those other things might be, but decided not to ask just yet. A few hours later, we were taxiing onto an empty ramp at Miami International. Soon we had our luggage loaded into a waiting limo and headed to her family's home. Miami hadn't changed much. Maybe a few more high-rises blocking the beach, but it was still the same hot and humid city. I remembered Lisa's mom lived on the southern edge of town and we got to her house pretty quickly. It was a modest single-story ranch with a white picket fence around the front yard. I was surprised at how clean and well-kept everything was. There were no signs of weather damage, which is tough in Florida, and the landscaping was immaculate. Even the roof looked like it was in perfect shape. As if reading my mind, Lisa said, "Your monthly contributions were more than enough to cover everything." I nodded. Lisa went inside while I handled the luggage and paid the limo driver. "Stay on call, Alonzo," I said when he mentioned he had other clients. I reassured him he'd be well compensated. After that I went inside. I expected the house to be dark and somber, but it was the opposite. It was tastefully decorated with a warm, welcoming vibe. Bright sunlight streamed through the windows, giving the place an airy feel. The air conditioning kept the temperature perfectly comfortable. Jason Michael. Well, it's about time, came the familiar voice of Angela Hartman. Hello, Angela, I said, walking over to her. She sat in a plush recliner with an Afghan blanket draped over her legs. I'm sorry. It's been so long since I visited. Enough of that. She interrupted. You're here now, and that's all that matters. Come here. I walked over and knelt beside her, taking her frail hand in mine. Angela smiled, though I could see the pain in her eyes even through her illness. She still radiated strength. You've still got that amazing view, I said, glancing out the large picture window that faced the beach and mangroves. Angela beamed. Yes, William loved it here. I worried I'd lose the house after he passed, but well, for 4 reasons. I didn't. She winked at me playfully. By the way, I always meant to ask, did you pay off the mortgage 5 years ago? I smiled, guilty as charged. I wanted to help, but I asked the bank not to mention it. Angela shook her head softly. Jason, I know you feel like you had to do all of this, but you didn't. You didn't even know us back then, and Will was gone by that time, but I do appreciate it. You've always been part of this family. For the first time in a long while I felt tears welling up. I hadn't even cried when my wife pulled that stunt on me, but here was this incredible woman, a widow and mother, telling me how much I meant to her, and she was dying. Come here, Jason, Angela said, reaching out. I leaned in, and she embraced me tightly. I couldn't hold back the emotions anymore. All I could think about was this wonderful woman dying yet comforting me. I broke down in her arms as she gently ran her fingers through my hair. After about 15 minutes, Angela let me sit up and look at her. Feel better? She asked with a gentle smile. I nodded. The weight of the past few days, Ellen, Angela, my past had finally caught up to me. I hadn't realized how much I'd been holding inside. Angela, I'll find the best doctors for you, the best hospitals, to know. Jason, Angela said softly. I've made peace with God, there's nothing more to be done. The cancer has spread too far and it's caused too much damage. I'll be lucky to stay with my family another 3 weeks. Please don't worry, I'm just glad I got to see you before I go. Looking at her, I couldn't understand why good people had to suffer so much. It didn't seem fair. She still looked as beautiful as the first time I visited, and I realized how much Lisa resembled her. The same fair skin, emerald green eyes, and rich dark crimson hair. Jason, are you staying for a few days? Angela asked. I could see how tired she was, whether from the cancer or something else. Angela, I'm not leaving, I said firmly. You're stuck with me. Tears welled up in her eyes, and I could see how exhausted she was now. Get some rest, I said gently. Angela smiled and nodded, leaning her head back to look out the window. In a few minutes, she was asleep. I stood gazing down at her, the mother I always needed, but never had. As she's sleeping, came a soft voice behind me. Turning, I saw Lisa standing in the doorway watching her mother. Breathed steadily. Yeah, she's resting, I replied. Thank you, Jason. Thank you for being here, she said, stepping forward quietly. She hugged me and I wrapped my arms around her as she trembled and softly sobbed against my chest. My heart went out to this beautiful but grieving woman. I'm glad you called me, I said. She blushed and quickly turned away. Are you staying here? She asked. I think I am, I answered. Then I'll show you to your room. Follow me, she said, leading me down the hallway. She stopped at the last room on the left. This was Bobby's room. He's living in New York now. Bobby got a job at the DeLandau Research Foundation. He's working as an assistant to Dr. James Wishman on some quantum physics project. Don't ask me to explain it. I'm just a humble surgical nurse, Lisa added with a smile, though I could see she was proud of Bobby's success. Both Bobby and Dean have a lot of respect for you, Jazz. They were sorry they couldn't be here to greet you, but they'll be here in a few days. Bobby told me to make sure you feel at home. The room was impressively tidy with walls decorated in paintings and sketches of stars and galaxies. A shelf along the far wall displayed models of rockets and spacecraft stages from different eras, starting with the German V-2 rocket, The lineup included the Redstone rocket with the Mercury capsule, the Titan rocket with the Gemini capsule, the massive Saturn rocket with the Apollo 3 and craft, and even the ill-fated Challenger space shuttle. At least now I had an idea of what Bobby was working on in New York. I glanced at Lisa as she stood beside me watching my reaction. "This is perfect." "Thank you, Lisa," her expression suddenly became serious jazz. "How long are you planning to stay?" she asked with concern. I took her hand and whispered, "As long as it takes before." I knew it. She wrapped her arms around me, crying again. I stood there unsure of what to do until she pulled back and looked up at me before I could react. She stood on her toes and kissed me on the lips, then quickly jumped back shocked. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have done that," she exclaimed, spinning around and running out of the room, leaving me standing there stunned. I shook my head trying to collect my thoughts. "Don't even go there," I told myself. Lisa was an incredible woman. So much like her mother, she was beautiful, smart, charming, and had a wonderful scent. It would be so easy to fall for her, but she was Angela's daughter and I was still married for now. At least I called Matthew Brunn and told him I had arrived in Miami and where I was staying. Matt sounded believe Jazz Ellen is losing it. She's been maltreating the office every day, and both Jack and John, those two partners of yours, have made it clear she's not allowed on company property. The last time she came looking for you, she caused such a scene that security had to physically remove her. Matthew, I'll deal with her when I get back after she's been served. Okay, how long are you staying in Miami? A dear friend of mine is dying. I'll be here as long as needed. Got it, just keep in touch. I will let Jack and John know what's going on. Will do. Take care. After he hung up, I tossed the phone on the nightstand, the image of Ellen standing in the kitchen smugly looking at me with her lover by her side flashed in my mind. Screw her, I muttered. I unpacked, changed into something comfortable, and lay on the bed. It had been a long day and I realized how exhausted I was. I checked my watch. 600. I'll just rest for a bit, then help Lisa around the house, maybe get some dinner for everyone. I thought, yeah, just a quick nap. A voice woke me. "Jason, do you want something to eat?" I mumbled, "Yeah, sure." Lisa giggled and said, "What would you like for breakfast?" My eyes shot open. Lisa stood in the doorway wearing pale green pajamas in a darker green robe. "Breakfast? What time is it?" I asked, groggy. "It's 8:30 in the morning. Silly time to get up. I've got scrambled eggs, bacon and sourdough toast ready if you're hungry." As I sat up, I realized I was only wearing white boxer shorts and a white t-shirt. Lisa noticed my glance and blushed a deep red. "I went through your things and found a t-shirt for you," she stammered. "I figured you could keep the shorts. You were so out of it and looked uncomfortable, so I helped you out of your clothes. Don't worry, I've done this a lot with patients. It's no big deal." "Wow. I must have been really tired," I muttered. "The last thing I remember was planning to help you with dinner." Lisa smiled and reminded me, "Breakfast is getting cold." She pointed to the closet. "There's a robe in Bobby's closet. It should fit you with that." She disappeared down the hall when I walked into the kitchen. Lisa was busy preparing food and setting the table. "How's Angela?" I asked. Lisa sighed. "She's sleeping. She's been doing that a lot lately." I nodded and was about to step into the kitchen when Lisa stopped me. "Sit down," she ordered, grinning. I sat pretending to be scolded. She laughed and soon placed a plate full of scrambled eggs, bacon and 2 slices of toast in front of me. "Where's yours?" I asked. "Don't worry, you won't eat alone." She sat beside me devouring her food like she hadn't eaten in days. "My God, you can eat," I exclaimed. She blushed, her mouth full of eggs, and mumbled an apology as she hurried to swallow. "Sorry, I guess I was just really hungry," she explained. I glanced at Lisa's slim figure, wondering where she managed to put all that food. Just then a voice shouted, "Hey, sis, where's the food?" The kitchen door swung open and a red-headed young man stood there, gawking at the table. Dean, keep your voice down, Mom's sleeping. And where were you last night? You knew I was home with Mr. Lisa snapped. Geez, sorry Liz. I had a very important engagement, if you know what I mean, he said, winking at me as he grabbed a plate from the counter. Once he loaded his plate, he dropped into the chair across from me, sticking out his hand. It's great to have you here, mister, he said. Just call me Jazz, I said, shaking his hand. Jazz, he mumbled through a mouthful of food, then glancing at Lisa, he asked, how's Mom? She's been better, but seeing Jazz really cheered her up, Lisa replied. So what, or who was your important engagement? Lisa asked, her tone full of suspicion. Her name's Cindy, a real fine thing from the Pink Poodle. She invited me over to check out her sketches. She's got a great eye for lines and curves, Dean said with a grin, chewing his food. Dean, you're such a pig, Lisa growled, rolling her eyes. Yeah, isn't it great? He laughed. Dean, I hear you graduated from Georgia Tech with honors and a doctorate. What are you up to now? I asked, trying to steer the conversation in a different direction. Shaking his head, Dean replied, not much at the moment. I wanted to take some time off to be with Mom. After that, we'll see if you're interested. I might have something for someone with your skills in California. I offered. California? He mused. I'll think about that, but maybe later. How long are you staying for? As long as it takes, I said. He looked at me and nodded, sadness flickering in his eyes. Thanks for that, Jazz. It means a lot to her. She's always thought of you as the son she didn't get to keep. So that makes you my bro, and unfortunately Lisa's your sister. He teased, yelping as Lisa smacked him on the back of the head with a spatula. After breakfast, Lisa and Dean cleared the table. While I wandered into the living room, Angela was still asleep in her recliner, the Afghan pulled up over her shoulders. I sat on the couch watching her, overwhelmed with thoughts of Lisa and her brothers, losing both their father and soon their mother. This isn't fair, I thought bitterly. Why couldn't I do more for this family? For this amazing woman? I didn't realize I was crying until I felt a gentle hand on my shoulder. Lisa's voice whispered, come with me. She took my hand, guiding me outside onto the veranda. She led me further out to a small hill, sheltered by overhanging palm fronds. She pressed me against a sturdy tree trunk and kissed me, her lips firm on mine. Then she pulled back and softly wiped the tears from my eyes. I've wanted to do that ever since I saw you walk into that conference room, Lisa confessed. I'm sorry, Jazz, but your wife is a fool. I'm sorry. If I overstepped, I didn't let her finish. I pulled her close and kissed her back. Lisa melted in my arms, her lips meeting mine with the same intensity. I had been holding back everything about her lips, her hair, her eyes seemed to capture my soul. I didn't want to let go, but eventually I pulled away, gazing into her eyes. Lisa, maybe this isn't the right time. We're both dealing with difficult situations. Your mother, my wife, I don't want to hurt you. I whispered, my voice thick with emotion, but I think I'm falling in love with you. Her eyes welled with tears. Jason, I fell for you 7 years ago, when you first visited my mother. I never got you out of my mind. It broke my heart when I heard you were married, but I never forgot you. That's why I came to see you, to tell you about Mom. I had to see you again. I knew you were married. Please forgive me, she said, her voice trembling. My God, Lisa, there's nothing to forgive. I just wish I had known you before I met Ellen, I said, but I need to understand what happened with Ellen. I need to know what went wrong. What made her turn to someone else? I need to know why. I understand, she whispered, but just remember, whatever you decide, I'll be here. I always will, I nodded, and she kissed me again, this time, just a soft kiss on the lips. I held her close, burying my face in her hair, inhaling the scent of lilacs. God, what was wrong with me here? I was holding an extraordinary woman, but I felt the need to remain loyal to Ellen until I figured out what went wrong in our marriage. Even though it might be over, I still loved her, but what Ellen had done, what she'd tried to do, had shattered my trust and love. I needed answers. We walked back into the house to find Angela awake and smiling at us. My lord, you two look like you belong together. She said softly, "I'm sorry, Jason. I know you're married." I shouldn't have said that. Lisa and I both laughed and I reassured Angela, "It's okay. You and Lisa will always have a place in my heart." Over the next 2 weeks, Lisa and I were careful around each other. Dean picked up on the tension between us, often giving Lisa knowing smiles. One day, while standing in the hallway, I overheard them talking in the kitchen. "I'd be proud to have Jason as my brother-in-law," Dean said. "So would I," Bobby chimed in, having arrived home a week earlier. "Listen guys," Lisa said firmly, "Hyun's married. I'm not going to be the other woman, understand?" I couldn't hear their response, but I heard footsteps approaching, so I pretended I was just coming down the hallway. "Hey, Jason," Dean called out, "feel your ears burning. We were just talking about you. Too bad you're already taken, bro." Lisa's drooling over Dean, Lisa screamed, rounding the corner and swinging a spatula like a cop wielding a baton. Her brother bolted out the door and down the beach with Lisa chasing after him. Bobby and I doubled over with laughter, and from the living room, I heard Angela chuckling. She'd clearly overheard the exchange. Our laughter stopped suddenly when Angela started coughing violently. I rushed into the room and found her hunched over in the recliner. "Bobby, call emergency," I yelled, kneeling beside her and holding her in my arms. At the hospital, the doctor took us into a small conference room. "Lisa, I'm afraid your mother won't last much longer." "I'm sorry, but she likely won't make it through the night," Dr. Liu said gently. "What would you like to do?" Lisa, her voice, steady but full of sorrow, replied. "We want her home. I know she'd want to spend her last hours there." "I understand," Dr. Liu said softly. "I'll make the necessary arrangements." That afternoon, Angela was back home resting in her recliner, her head turned toward the setting sun. She could no longer respond, but I knew she understood. She wasn't alone. Lisa, Bobby, and Dean stood by her with Lisa holding her hand. Suddenly, Angela pulled on Lisa's arm, motioning her closer. I couldn't hear the whispered words, but Lisa straightened up and looked at me. "Jason, she's asking for you," Lisa said, her eyes filled with emotion. I knelt beside Angela, though her eyes were barely open. They were strikingly clear with great effort. She raised her hand and beckoned me closer. Leaning in, I heard her raspy voice whisper, "Jason, you've always held a special place in our hearts. Take care of her. I know you love her and she loves you. I'll always be there for you, always." Her hand slipped from mine and rested by her side. I looked into her eyes, seeing a single tear fall before she closed them, gently touching her cheek. I whispered, "And I will always love you, Angela, always." As I stood, I felt Lisa wrap her arms around my shoulders. I turned into her embrace, resting my head on her shoulder as deep sobs shook my body. "I should have been here more, taken better care of all of you, of her. I shouldn't have stayed away for so long," I cried, and Lisa held me close. "You were always here in spirit. If it weren't for you, life would have been so much harder for us. Don't ever doubt that," Lisa whispered, comforting me. Bobby and Dean moved closer to their mother, while Lisa continued to hold me. After some time, I regained control of my emotions. I turned to Bobby, gently pulled the Afghan Angela loved over her face. Dean stood next to him, his arm around Bobby's shoulder. Lisa quietly left to call the coroner's office. In the mortuary, standing there, the former street kid, ex-Marine, ex-boxer, and now successful businessman. I realized I was helpless. Angela's children had everything under control. Silently, I promised Angela I would look after them, that they would be okay. I stumbled out onto the veranda, watching the sun set on the horizon. I felt Lisa's presence next to me, her hand resting on my arm as the last bit of sunlight disappeared. Then something caught my eye. Lisa gasped. Just as the sun vanished, a brilliant flash of green lit up the horizon. I had heard about the legendary green flash, but never believed in it. "Mom was right," Lisa whispered in awe, holding on to me. "I love you." I stayed in Miami for another week before calling Matthew Brunn to let him know I'd be back the following day. "Jazz think are crazy. Here, your wife is going nuts over your absence. She's convinced you're with a lover. Apparently someone at the company told her. You left in the corporate jet with a young woman." Matt explained. That's fine, I said resigned. She can investigate all she wants. She won't find anything. Has she been served yet? Yes, Ellen was served at work. From what I hear, she broke down. They had to take her into a back office. I guess she wasn't expecting that from you. Have your pie found anything? I asked. Yes, they have. Apparently Ellen's been having an affair with a high-ranking executive. Let's see. James Reed, a VP at Dalton Communications. The Mercedes in your driveway belongs to his wife, Marilyn Reed. It seems Ellen and James have been seeing each other for months. Maybe longer. She's been telling people you two have an open marriage. Does that sound right? Come on, Nat, what do you think? Yeah. I didn't think so. He replied, then added, get this, she's counter-suing for infidelity. What? I nearly shouted. Where did she get that idea? Well, she named two women in the countersuit, Angela Hartman and Karen Riley. Remember them? I warned you to tell Ellen about them. Matt said, his tone serious. Damn. I thought she knew. How did she find out? I muttered that might explain why she's lost it. Matt mused. Time to set things straight. Okay, you were right, but that doesn't excuse what she's done. She should have come to me. First, I could have explained it all. Look. You've got the paperwork showing everything about Angela and Karen, and Angela just passed away. I'm sorry, Jason. I know how much she meant to you. How are you holding up? Matt's tone softened. I'm doing better, but I want to keep the monthly checks going. Set up a trust for her kids, Lisa, Bobby, and Dean. I promised they'd be taken care of. They don't need it now, but their kids might someday. I explained. I understand, Jez. I'll take care of it. What about the countersuit? I've got nothing to hide. Send her lawyer the full records on the supposed affairs that should shut them up. Will do. By the way, was James Reed listed in the divorce? Matt asked almost as an afterthought. No, given the incident at my house, we thought it best to leave that alone. Yeah, maybe you're right. You did get some justice. Didn't you? I recalled the scene vividly. You could say that. Matt chuckled. Hune's still recovering. Lisa saw me off at the airport. The next day before I boarded, she hugged me tightly and whispered, no matter what you decide, Jason, I'll always be here for you. Don't forget that. I won't, I promised, and I want you to know no matter what happens. You've already captured my heart and soul, but I have an obligation to Ellen. Somehow she's come to believe I've been having an affair with your mother, Lisa gasped. Oh no, yes, and I need to set her straight. Not that I think it'll change anything. She's already shattered my heart and trust beyond repair, I said, my voice heavy with resignation. I understand, Lisa whispered softly. Please take care of yourself. I nodded and kissed her deeply before heading toward the boarding gate. I turned for one last look before she disappeared from sight. Ellen sat across from me, her attorney beside her and Matthew next to me. Once her legal team received the notarized documents regarding Angela and Karen, her countersuit fell apart. Even the rumor of me leaving with an attractive woman collapsed when they learned I had Simpel flown to be with my unofficially adopted mother in her final days, accompanied by her daughter, Lisa. The legal battle dragged on for nearly 2 months before we finally met face to face. At this final meeting, Ellen had insisted on talking to me before finalizing the divorce. Jason, I'm so sorry, Ellen said, her voice shaking. I truly believed you were having a long-time affair with those two women. Someone came to me with evidence that you were providing financial support to them. What was I supposed to think? You were supposed to love and trust me enough to ask me about it. I replied, my voice hard. That's what you were supposed to do, not jump into another man's arms and flaunt it in front of me. Did you really think I'd just accept being turned into a betrayed man? And by the way, how's Reed? Or should I say, Johnson? Les Ellen winced. He's still undergoing surgeries. He was lucky they didn't have to amputate, but he did lose a testicle and they removed several glass fragments from around his lap. He wanted to press charges against you for attack, but I convinced him everything would come out and his wife would find out. She's the one with all the money and power. She owns the company, Ellen said quietly, looking away. I haven't seen him since that day. She added softly. Let me guess, you thought having read over that day to flaunt him in my face would make me realize what I drove you to do. I asked, shaking my head in disbelief. Ellen stared at me, as if seeing me for the first time. I didn't expect your reaction. She admitted. I laughed bitterly. Did I ruin your plans? Elle, sorry about that. I know how important he was to you, Matthew, and his pies kept me informed. It wasn't much of a secret at your company. Everyone, except Reed's wife, knew what was going on. Matthew grunted and looked out the window. As I continued, look, Elle, you chose to believe your so-called source instead of coming to me, and I know it was Reed. He was trying to dig up dirt on me to win you over. He just didn't look hard enough, and neither did you. You jumped right into his arms. Didn't you? Ellen's lawyer cleared his throat. Mister, you have no right to speak to my client in that screw. You, I interrupted. I have every right, Ellen, gasped Jason. Please stop. I slammed my hand on the table and leaned forward. You never gave me a chance. Elle, you wanted this to happen. I think you needed it to happen. You fell for him and didn't want to risk that he might have been wrong about me. I stood and walked to the window, staring out at the courtyard. After a moment, I turned back, my voice softer but full of pain. Tell me the truth, Elle. What did I do to push you away? It couldn't have been just what Reed said. Was I a bad husband? Did I not give you enough attention? Was I not enough in bed? What was it? I demanded, my gaze piercing hers. Tears streamed down Ellen's face as she stammered. I don't know, Jason. Don't call me that, I said coldly. Only those I love and care about call me Jazz. You lost that right. The moment you let another man touch you. Ellen's eyes widened, her mouth opened in shock. Her words faltered, and she abruptly stood and fled the room. Tears streaming down her face, her attorney glared at me and followed her out. Matthew sighed and began packing the documents. Well, I guess that's the end of this meeting. I'll handle the paperwork and filing. Anything else, Jazz? My chest still tight from the confrontation. I shook my head. No, I'm going to the condo. Call me if you need anything. Matt nodded as I left the office, unsure where that emotional outburst had come from. I thought I had moved past all of it, but maybe Ellen's betrayal still hurt more than I realized. Back at my condo, I grabbed a beer and sat on the patio watching planes take off and land at the nearby airport. My thoughts drifted between Ellen, Angela, and Lisa. While I still had some feelings for Ellen, she had destroyed most of the love I once had for her. Nothing could justify her actions. I pictured Lisa on the beach watching the sunset. She was like a sister to me. Angela's daughter and just a few years younger, but I wondered how her father, Deputy Hartman, would feel. Would he approve of me being with her? I doubted it. He only known me as a troubled street kid. Maybe I wasn't meant to be happy. I muttered. Angela's voice suddenly echoed in my mind. Jason, don't you dare think like that. You promised me you'd be there for Lisa. Her image vanished as I reached for her. I jolted awake, still on the patio, realizing what I had to do. Meanwhile, Lisa sat under a mangrove tree by the ocean waiting for Jason to reach out. She wondered if he had decided to fix things with Ellen, the thought making her heart ache. How could he go back to a woman who betrayed him so deeply? Tears welled up in her eyes when she heard a soft voice say, "Here, use this." Jason knelt beside her gently, wiping her tears away. She looked into his eyes, the only man she had ever loved. "I'm sorry it took so long," Jason said softly. "You're here, that's all that matters," Lisa whispered, her voice shaky. He kissed her gently. "And I'll always be with you," he promised. They turned to watch the sunset together as a brilliant flash of green lit the horizon, nature's way of blessing their love. Lisa looked up, imagining her parents smiling down on them. "I'm going to turn this one over to you. What do you make of this situation? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and as always, a huge thank you from the bottom of my heart for getting involved in today's stories. Your love, support, and time mean the world to me. So, thank you so much for being part of this. I really appreciate your time. I'll see you in the next one. Take care and much love.